Mr. Walker, I also express my condolences, and your family story is an important reminder for many people that, like military service, law enforcement is often a family affair in this country, and some families bear the brunt of that service to keep our country and our people safe. Ms. White, this morning, the director of the Bureau of Prisons testified in front of the full committee. She said that the Bureau has only 14,899 correctional officer slots. Those slots are 82% filled. In other words, the Bureau has approximately 12,300 correctional officers today. Is she correct in your understanding that the Bureau is nearly fully staffed?
No, sir.
Could you explain a little bit more why?
Sure. So I have one of her staffing reports in front of me. The agency is very protective of their numbers, as you guys have seen in many hearings. As of pay period 26, which was December 30th, we are showing 12,306 officers. Typically, I have to reach out to 121 institutions and get their staffing reports to compile those to get those numbers. But that's the number I show, and that's why I testified to those numbers. I did hear she testified this morning to 14,000 and some change, and I have a hard time believing that since December 30th, she has brought on over 2,000 officers.
Yeah. As it happens, I just went on their website and, since the hearing, and I looked up any potential openings, and they list openings, and it says location, prisons nationwide, and the number of openings is many vacancies.
Correct.
Many is capitalized, many vacancies. To what I think I'll submit that screenshot for the record, Mr. Chairman. While I'm at that,
That might be the first time in Senate history a screenshot has been submitted, but no objection.
Okay. And I think what happened this morning is that the director was speaking only, if you might say, about frontline correctional officers, excluding things like lieutenants or supervisory correctional officers. Is that your understanding?
Yes, sir.
So it would be as if the Secretary of the Army gave you only the number of privates he had, not the number of NCOs and officers he had. Is that right? Right.
So many times we disagree on numbers, and again, they're not very public with their numbers, but oftentimes when I've discussed with them, there is a series, it's a 007, and there's other individuals that are included in that series, counselors, lieutenants, other individuals that are not primary correctional officers. So I don't know if that's the confusion or the difference in the numbers, but according to my records, we have right around 12,000 officers.
And you believe that the number of Bureau of Prison Correctional Officers over the last year has decreased, not increased, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Mangual, the total federal and state prison population has declined by more than 20% since it peaked in 2013. Has violent crime increased or decreased as the prison population declined?
It's gone up significantly.
That's what I thought. Would you say that there's been at least some inmates in federal and state prisons who don't necessarily need to be there, at least maybe not as long as they are, at least some?
Sure, but I think it's also important to recognize that there is a significant number of individuals on the street today who need to be inmates.
Well, my next question, at least some criminals out on the streets who maybe should be in prisons today?
Quite a few more.
And which one is higher, the number of people in prison who maybe don't need to be there and the number of people on the streets who maybe do need to be in prison?
I would say certainly it's the number of people on the street who do need to be in prison, and one indicator of that is just the clearance rate numbers in this country. If you look at the 8 index felonies that are consistently tracked by the federal government, the clearance rate only hovers at about 50% for the violent ones and about 20% for the nonviolent ones, which indicates that the vast majority of the crime, the serious felony crime, goes unanswered for. So that in and of itself should tell you.
And isn't it the case that the vast majority of crimes are committed by a very small percentage of the population?
That's exactly right. I mean, the bulk of our crime problem is and has long been driven by very, very active, overactive offenders. And so you can actually get a lot of bang for your buck by, targeting carceral resources appropriately.
And I think you testified earlier that something like 8 crimes are avoided for every person in prison?
Per year, yeah. And that's a pretty conservative estimate because it's an estimate derived from official crime reports. And one of the other things that we know is that most crime that occurs in this country does not get reported, and that's evidenced by the consistent disparity between the National Crime Victimization Survey and UCR.
Okay. My time is almost up. Mr. Chairman, one more administrative matter. I have a letter dated yesterday from the major county sheriffs of America, urging Congress to prioritize legislation that supports the recruitment and retention of law enforcement in all areas, to include corrections. Of course, the county sheriffs also have an important correctional role to play as they run our county jails as well. I ask for consent that this letter be added to the hearing record.
I will add it with considerable alacrity. Is that it?
That is all.